Okay, looks like we're streaming now. I think I was successful. Om Jnana Timinandasya Yananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vande Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Sahodito Gorai Pushpavanto Chitra Sando Tamorado Vandeham Shri Ramakrishna Abhaya Charanasago Sukado Paramanando Sundaro Subalapriyo Vancha Kapa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Okay, thank you everyone for joining. A little preface, this is my first real time-giving classes, so be a learning experience. And I'm very introverted, so it's definitely taken a lot for me to share. So please be patient, and hopefully we'll get something out of these classes. So the series is titled Prahlad, Simple-Hearted Devotion. I really wanted to dive into the idea of simplicity. It's something that I find very attractive. Personally, for my specific nature, simplicity is it's essential. And I've found, to the extent that I've been able to cultivate it in a devotional way. Well, we can get into that, different types of simplicity, but the extent I've been able to cultivate simplicity in a devotional context, I found it very nourishing for my sadhana. If we're not careful, Bhakti can become very complex. Because we're very complex. So naturally we want to even something as simple and beautiful as Bhakti. And I think the desire for simplicity, not only is it really important, I think it, or I should say the facet of simplicity, it's not only very important, I think it's also very desired. I think a lot of people or devotees find that quality or that element to be very desirable and have and really want to implement that in their lives, in their sadhana. And it's a very interesting term. It's used a lot. Say to be simple-hearted, simple-minded, simple for the simple living, high thinking. But to actually get into what is simplicity, what are the elements of it in the context of devotion, is kind of the focus of this series. Sorry, my notes are a little messy here, but so with simplicity, I naturally went to Prahlad, partly because I was reading on Narad visiting him in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita at the time. And I hadn't really studied Prahlad Charit, I was feeling, in an in-depth way, especially given the emphasis and the example we see of Mahaprabhu, hearing the Prahlad Charit from Gadadhar over and over again. And speaking of which, it's Gadadhar's appearance day this month, so I think we have, I hope we have his blessings to try to say something about Prahlad. It's also the appearance and disappearance of Bhaktivinoda Tirtha Maharaj this month, who wrote a book on Prahlad Charit. And Guru Maharaj often likes to quote the introduction of that book, where he says, if those who say they've heard Prahlad Charit have not actually heard it. I was reading a translation of the preface or something to that book, and Bhaktivinoda Tirtha Maharaj mentioned that progress means same thing, new taste. So I think we can apply that especially to Prahlad, given the example we have of Mahaprabhu hearing over and over again. And there's many different reasons one could say why Mahaprabhu was hearing the Prahlad Charit over and over again from Gadadhar, how he was finding new taste from the same narrative each time. But I think one reason could be that Prahlad really embodies the foundational qualities of a devotee. Some have designated him, I think Vishwanath have considered Prahlad as a Dasya Bhakta. Others, like Pujapad Sridhar Maharaj, following Sanatana Goswami's kind of thread in Brihad Bhagavatamrita, where Narad visits Shiva, then Prahlad, then Hanuman. Hanuman obviously being a Dasya Bhakta. Sridhar Maharaj considers Prahlad a Shanta Ras Bhakta, in that kind of spiritual hierarchy of rasa. So I think Shanta means peacefulness. I think simplicity and peacefulness definitely have a very kind of interwoven dynamic. If one's peaceful at heart, peaceful at mind, then naturally they'll conduct themselves. Their relationships, their inner life will follow in kind of a simple manner. They won't be so, Maya is kind of like a web, a very intertangled web, which is like the opposite of simplicity, right? Interwoven complexity. Of course, there's another kind of interwoven complexity in kind of higher rasic considerations, but kind of on the foundational baseline, we could say to kind of like undo this web of complexity, and to not be, not have ulterior motives, not to be sly or facetious, or, if we say something, someone thinks it's true because it's straightforward, it's one-pointed, it's simple. That's kind of the simplicity that Prahlad embodies. And I think those qualities as a embodiment of kind of a foundation of devotion. You kind of think of Prahlad in that way. I think he's a very pivotal person for sadhakas to meditate on, remember the qualities of the pastimes, the tolerance, the compassion, as a young boy. So one way I was thinking of Shantarasa, if we take Prahlad to be in Shantarasa, is almost like the nishta of rasa, in the sense that nishta is like the interim goal on the way to bhav and prem, the higher stages. Nishta is kind of something that a sadhaka in a nishta bhajana kriya can identify with. It's a little harder to identify with bhava or prem when one's still in the bhava sindhu of material life. It can be a little disconcerting to try to even think about the agony of separation of the gopis or the gopas when one is feeling anxiety in a material suffering way. So a lot of times nishta has been described as like the interim goal, kind of steadiness, uninterrupted bhakti. And in that sense, it's kind of like the doorway. When the intelligence is fully absorbed, engaged in bhakti, and one's bhakti is steady. It's not tripping. It's steady. It's kind of it's gradual, but it's steady. So it's allowing progress to accumulate, allowing momentum to build. I often think of sadhana. It's like momentum is a very powerful element of sadhana. And you can really see when you don't have momentum in your sadhana, if you've been out of kind of a good rhythm and good sangha for a while, then just to like pick up the beads or just to hear a class, or it can be hard. Naturally, devotional thoughts won't be arising. One won't see one's life naturally in a devotional way. If that momentum's not there, there has to be more kind of effort to get back on. But if one is able to find steadiness in such a way that momentum can build, not like not like waves of momentum necessarily like bhava, but kind of steady momentum can build if you have a foundation for that. Where that momentum will take you is unlimited. If you can kind of contain it, give it a proper vehicle to grow in. So just as nishta is this kind of this doorway to the higher stages of sadhana bhakti and bhava and prem, I was thinking we could see Shantarasa as a doorway to the higher rasas, in the sense that it embodies a lot of foundational qualities that need to be in place for the higher rasas, Sakya ras, Vatsalya ras, Madhurya ras, to manifest. And I think one thing that's really important is for anything like nishta or shantarasa, when we talk about it as like a doorway, it's not something that you walk through and say goodbye to. I think it's very helpful to see these aspects express themselves in the higher parts of sadhana or higher rasas. Because if we don't, I don't think they're as inspiring to us. I don't think we can really fully identify with them in the same way. If you just see Nishta as an interim goal with no expression in the higher stages, then the aspects of Nishta, like steadiness and kind of grounded in the philosophy, these aspects, they won't be as inspiring if you don't see them playing out in the higher stages. And same with Shantarasa, or we could say in this aspect, simplicity, the quality of simplicity. If you see that having no expression in the Vraj Lila or Gaur Lila, then it's not really, I mean, you'll think it's important, like any of these foundational qualities, like tolerance, humility, compassion, material detachment. Any of these foundational qualities, if you see them having no expression in the absolute attainment, then you'll see them as kind of like just an interim goal. And then, yeah, I know they should be cultivated, but they don't really, I don't really identify with them on like a deep heart level in such a way that I'm going to change my life and constantly integrate these aspects and identify with them in an eternal way, not just as an interim way. And so like if we take, well, I guess one kind of other note I had was in that connection, Guru Maharaj often talked about how Sridhar Maharaj wouldn't necessarily talk about the highest aspects of rasa and bhakti, but he'd talk about kind of the most foundational qualities, lower qualities. I'm not the biggest fan of that word, but foundational qualities. He would talk about them in the highest way, to their highest expression. Taking something that a sadhaka is working on and showing how what's the fullest expression of that. And so if we were to look at simplicity and say, okay, well, we're looking at simplicity in this series and as something to identify, to cultivate, to work on, to understand what it is. What's the expression of simplicity in Braj? Because that's our goal, to enter the Vraj Lila as either a gopi or a gopa. So how is simplicity expressing itself there? And I think you could say on an external level, it's pretty simple. The simple village cowherd setting. They're just herding cows, churning milk, turning yogurt into butter. It's it's a very kind of bucolic, simple setting. It's a village setting. It's not a complex metropolitan area. So you could say, yeah, externally it's simple. But I think if you look a little deeper, the internal life of the devotees in Krishna is not very simple. You have, I mean, of course, when you talk about like breakdown on like the tattva level. Each devotee has their sthai bhav. They see Krishna in this way. And so naturally that sthai bhav will be excited by different udipanas, which may cause like a transitory emotion. I think it's a vidya chari bhav, which will lead to different kind of ecstatic sattvika bhavs. And how will they express these complex, exciting emotions? They'll express them in parokshavad, which means like indirect. Krishna likes indirect language very much. So even if they're feeling something, they'll express it in kind of another way, in a hidden way. So everything's kind of like hidden. I mean, it's all centered around Radha and Krishna, and that's hidden. So this place isn't simple at all. It's very complex. But I think you almost have to like look underneath that again. You go to the simple external, the complex kind of emotional expressions, and internal life. But I think underlying that, you can find a real simplicity, an internal simplicity of these devotees are living for the sole purpose of pleasing Krishna. I mean, just cut and dry, just simple. If Krishna's pleased, I'm pleased, and that's the end. There's no ulterior kind of different motives that are weaving in and distracting one, taking one here and there. They have the same goal every day. How can I please Krishna? How can I please Krishna today? And I think another thing that's important to remember too is when we talk about these relationships in the spiritual realm, it can be complex to talk about. You have all these terms and words, and I mean, it's really just expressing the love between a friend and a friend, or between lovers, between parent and child. So it's one thing to talk about, it's another to like actually experience it. Because the minds are active in Braj, but it's not the way our minds are active. We're having to think and understand all these types of theological concepts. Again, the minds are active just to please Krishna. It's a very kind of natural, ragatmika means like natural inborn affection for Krishna. I think natural and simplicity are very much tied together. When something feels natural, it comes simply to one. So we can say in that way the Vrajbasis, and of course the extending to the Navadvip Basis, the eternal associates of Krishna, of Mahaprabhu, have a very kind of simple core of just loving and wanting to please Krishna. So that's important. Again, it's important to see the expression of these things in our goal. And they'll take new shapes. They'll express themselves in new ways, like humility or simplicity, any of these things. It's not going to be the same way. I mean, we'd hope not. We'd hope it's growing. We'd hope it's evolving. But to not think that this is different, that this is just some interim thing that I'll give up. No, this thing is like a cornerstone of our devotion that we're cultivating for her, for our eternal identity, our eternal service. Very important. So, turning to Prahlad, how is he simple? Why have I chosen him to explore the concept, the idea of the quality of simplicity? Well, on an overt level, he's a child, which seems kind of silly to mention. Yeah, he's a child, so he must be simple. But I think it's important that in this Leela, he, of course, he grows into the great Prahlad Maharaj, who's a king and stuff. But in this Leela, as we see in the Bhagavatam, he's the child of Hiranyakashipu, and he's still, just a young child, still in early school. And I think it's part of the reason why the story is so powerful, because of his innocence, childlike nature, and kind of the simplicity that he conducts himself that comes along with that. You wouldn't expect to see such powerful results. I guess like the power behind simplicity, the power behind his innocence, I think is a powerful element of the story. It reminds me of the story of Raghunandan Thakur, who is an associate of Mahaprabhu, but I think in the Chaitanya Charitamrita it's described how as a young boy, his father had to go out, had some work, so he left him, and he said, make an offering to the deity while I'm gone, and when I come back we can eat. So he did as his father asked, and when his father came back, he found that the offering, the ladu, had a bite in it. And so the father, the father said, what is this? You haven't even waited till I came back to eat? And he said, no, I wasn't the one who ate it. The deity ate it. And the deity ate the ladu. And the father was thinking, this boy doesn't understand. The deity eats with his eyes. See, the father kind of knew the whole tattva, the complexities of it. It's like the deity doesn't actually eat. The deity glances, and all his senses can perform the activities of any other sense. So through his eyes, just through seeing the offering, the deity tastes and accepts the offering. But in such a way that the food remains and the devotees can take the remnants. So the father thought, this boy doesn't understand. He doesn't understand the way you offer food. And clearly he's eaten it himself. So I think Raghunandan's kind of stuck to his story, or it's the father was a little surprised he didn't kind of back down. He said, no, the deity ate the ladu. So the father said, okay, then you can make the offering again. So the next day, the father went out again, but actually hid behind like the corner of the room, with the idea that the child Raghunandan would make the offering again. So when the time came, Raghunandan offered the ladu, and the deity came down and took a bite. And the father caught him, the deity, went back, and so it's a very it's a very it's become a pilgrimage, I think, for people to go see this half-eaten laddu, to see how the devotion of Raghunandan could move the Lord in such a way. And yeah, I think it's a good story, because we can get so limited. I mean, I'd like, how can I say, like the Siddhanta of all these aspects of bhakti are extremely, extremely important. But we just have to be very careful that they're not, we understand their fullest expression, I should say, and where they're taking us. And so this idea of like, you offer to the deity, and the deity will taste the food with his eyes, and through that he'll accept the offering. And but Raghunandan, in his simplicity, said, "No, the deity should eat. The deity needs to eat." So he he called the deity and made the deity come and eat. So I think it's important to see how we are I mean, really, we're learning all this tattva, all this siddhanta, so that we can just ask the deity to come eat, just simply and straightforward. um, and he will come and eat the laddu. One nice verse from the 10th chapter of the 7th canto. It's after Nrsimha tells Prahlad, again, we're going to the very end, but it's a nice verse, and I think it would be good to bring up now. After Nrsimha says, "Please accept some benediction. It's what I do. I'm God, and you've pleased me beyond measure. So I want to give you something." And Prahlad says, "I don't want anything. I mean, I just want devotion to you. But if there's one thing, I guess you can give devotion. Bless my father, who is caught up in this this wave of enviousness, enmity for you having killed his brother. So I give bhakti to him." And so, in response to that, Nrsimha says, "Bhavanti parusha loke madbhaktas tvam anuvrata. Bhavan me kalu bhaktanam sarvesham patirupa dik." And the translation is, this is Nrsimha speaking to Prahlad, "Those who follow your example will naturally become my pure devotees. You are the best example of my devotee, and others should follow in your footsteps." So this kind of connects back to the original idea of Prahlad as like a foundational figure, a foundational example for sadhakas to look to, kind of in pursuit of whatever rasa they're pursuing. Prahlad will be the best example. So Nrsimha says, and actually interesting in in the word-by-word translation, this is from Veda base. It says Bhaktanam Sarvesham Patirupadik. So Bhaktanam means of all devotees. Sarvesham means in different mellows. And Patirupadik is translated as tangible example. So of all devotees in different mellows. So the idea being Dasya Bhaktas, Sakya Bhaktas, Vatsalya Bhaktas, Madhurya Bhaktas, of all devotees. Nrsimha is saying, and of course Nrsimha has a little bias here. This is, he's Prahlad's Ishtadevata, so naturally he has deep, deep affection for Prahlad, and this is manifesting. But I don't think we should overemphasize that bias. I think we should take Nrsimha's word here, where he says, of all devotees in all different mellows, I think you're the best example for devotees to follow, because it's tangible. That's the word by word, tangible example. And connecting to the kind of the main theme of these classes, the tangible example we're going to be looking at is Prahlad's simplicity. And how simplicity, I guess two ways, how simplicity can be broken down into different elements, different qualities we see in Prahlad that contribute, that manifest his simplicity, that are kind of foundational parts of his simplicity, his simple-hearted devotion. I connected it with the heart. You could say simple-minded devotion, I guess, but again, it comes back to that kind of idea of natural. I think simplicity is very much tied with like a naturalness, very harmonious, and there's an ease to it. There should be an ease to simplicity. And I think Prahlad, in the face of great catastrophes, great attacks to kill him, and from the most powerful material person, Hiranyakashipu, with such ease, Prahlad responds. Such simple responses that you just feel like this just isn't a mental thing he's doing. This is really integrated into his heart, the simplicity. It's really just a natural kind of simplicity. So we'll be breaking down, because for him it's natural, or I should say for him it's perfected. For him, this is fully in place, these elements that are fostering his simplicity. The four ones that really stood out to me that we'll unpack and look at certain verses that either Prahlad speaks or others speak about him in the next four classes. The four elements, or four qualities of Prahlad that I found were very prominent in him and also very much connected to his simple-hearted devotion. First one was his detachment, which kind of is like a corollary, or his fearlessness. So that'll probably be the first one we explore. The second one we'll explore is that Prahlad doesn't waste time. I mean, from from the womb, he was engaging in bhakti. So definitely not wasting time. Prahlad has universal compassion. He doesn't see friends and enemies. This comes up a lot, this idea of friends and enemies, especially when Prahlad's talking to his other classmates, schoolmates, trying to share with them why why you should serve God, pretty much, why you should cultivate devotion. And we can see, towards the end also, he his one petition to Nrsimha is to bless his father, who's just been trying to kill him for like his whole life, you could say. Once he found out who he actually was. Imagine that. Once your father finds out, once you feel comfortable to like fully share who you are with your father, your mother, what really moves you in life, what you like, your father just decides, okay, I don't like that. You're not my son, and I'll try and kill you. So Prahlad wasn't in a space to see him as an enemy. He didn't have it in him, and so naturally, he's a friend to everyone. So naturally, his compassion even extended to that darkest, the darkest and heaviest authority figure in his life. So we'll explore universal compassion, and then in the last class, we'll explore Prahlad's one-pointed desire. And I think this, of course, you could see the other three elements coming from this. His one-pointed desire to serve God, to serve Nrsimha, Krishna, and how that is of such a nature. I mean, just what that is that because that's in place, naturally he's detached. Naturally he doesn't waste time. Naturally he has universal compassion. So, sorry, one sec. I'm being called. I'll just let Gore know that. I'll be right back. Gore, I'm giving class. He was very sorry, but it's his birthday today, so he shouldn't be sorry. You can all wish Gore a happy birthday. I haven't done so yet. So, yeah, the nature of this bhakti, of Prahlad's one-pointed desire to serve God, how that one desire creates these others beautiful qualities in him, and how all these combine, I think, to showcase and foster his simple-heartedness, and how we can take his example, and we'll also explore ways in which, as sadhakas, we could understand these qualities and try to integrate them into our own sadhanas, our own lives, to bring simplicity, so that our I think purity too is very connected with the idea of simplicity. So, trying to somehow bring these elements into our life so that we can make simple, heartfelt, pure offerings to Guru, to Gauranga, Krishna, and I think that is really important because, as I mentioned before, this Bhakti does, especially in our form of Bhakti, it gets very layered. Very layered with different bhavas and emotions and relationships and the tattva expressing all that. But I think to have a foundation of simplicity, to be simple in one's dealings, simple in one's heart, simple in one's approach, allows one to embrace those kind of more nuanced, layered, complex, you could even say, indirect, hidden. I mean, all these kind of non-simple. You can embrace those in a simple way, with simplicity, with a simple desire, simple intention, and those may move you in layered, complex ways, but there'll be a foundation. I guess in that way, I'm kind of connecting simplicity to Sharanagati. There'll be a kind of a simple foundation that those higher feelings expressions can rest on, develop on, express themselves on, without overwhelming one. Or even, I mean, it's not even, by overwhelm, I mean like, again, it comes back to like, if you're, if the material web, if one's very materially layered, very complex and not simple, straightforward, then these higher layers, complexities, will be hard to understand. What to speak of, enter into. I mean, you can't if you have these layers and complexities of surrounding the Atma with different kind of samskars, material samskars, and so forth. And you know, one thing that I think I forgot to mention, but I think is important, is again this idea of coming back to this idea of to really identify with it and to it's to really identify, that's the right word, to really identify with something. It's important to see it in the final goal. And one example of that is Guru Bhakti. And Guru Bhakti is so central to our tradition. There's actually a really nice part in Sacred Preface. I believe it's the first chapter, where Krishna's Kaviraj pays obeisance to Gurus plural. And Guru Maharaj talks about how one will see the Guru according to one's advancement in bhakti, according to one's eligibility. And I'd love him to write like a whole book about that. It's a very interesting topic, but it's, you know, the same principle is there, Guru Bhakti. Of course, in like a basic way, we see it in Guru Ashtakam, where the Guru is first Sakshat Hari, directly God, manifestation of God. And then he says, Kintu Prabhoya Priyeva Tasya. So, but, and the but's like, you're advancing. But Guru is also very dear to God. And so this kind of direct, the Guru being Krishna himself, that develops into, the Guru is very dear to Krishna. So the Guru is a devotee of Krishna. And that Guru Bhakti is like, it's not like the disciple does Guru Bhakti in one stage and then leaves it in the next once he finds, oh, Guru is just a disciple or a devotee. But no, it becomes, it progresses, it develops, and that continually develops. What does it mean that the Guru is dear to Krishna? Guru is dear to Krishna in this specific way. The Guru has a certain affinity. The Guru has a certain, role model. These different types of aspects of who the Guru is, and so I think it's a nice example because it's one reason why we identify with Guru Bhakti so strongly in our tradition, because it's in the final goal. In Vraj or Gaur Leela, we'll have a group leader. A kind of a Nitya Siddha group leader, like Subal or so forth, or Rupa Manjari. But we'll also have a kind of a microcosmic group leader in the form of one's guru, and the guru that one's identified with and followed into the that the guru's pulled into the Leela with him through his mercy. So because it has an eternal expression, not the same as it expresses itself here, it develops, of course, in such a way that the relationship, guru and disciple relationship is dasya with a tinge of sakya. So you could say, like, in the ultimate expression, it would be more sakya with a tinge of dasya. There would be more kind of trust and equality in that relationship. But still, that relationship extends itself all the way to Vraj, to Gaur Leela. So I think that's part of the reason why devotees identify with it so much. So similarly, if we can really identify with these foundational qualities and see their ultimate expression in Braj. And as I said, it can be a little hard, as I said, the simplicity of gopis talking to Krishna. I mean, read like some of the Leela Granthas by the Goswamis and you won't even know what they're saying. It's so layered. This parokshavad, this kind of indirect speech, has thousands of meanings, but they're all pleasing to Krishna, every single one of them. And I think, I can think of it kind of like there's happiness and suffering. The happiness of the separation. I think in the beginning, that's pretty difficult for a lot of devotees to relate with. In time, I think it becomes more understandable how the separation, the lamentation of spiritual suffering, how that truly is one of the highest expressions of ananda, of prema, and how it is so solely blissful. I think in a similar way, you could say, see some of these foundational qualities. You could see the humility when Radha's rebuking Krishna, the simplicity, coming back to our the simplicity in these layered dealings, and I mean especially in Gaur Lila as well. There it's a lot more overt, simple. Of course, you know, it becomes layered as well, but so yeah, we'll try to, in these next 4 classes, I get 5 classes this month, so unlucky for you guys, but maybe Prahlad will share some mercy with us, and we'll find simple, identifiable, and far-reaching inspiration from exploring his qualities and devotion in the context of the Prahlad Charit as given in Srimad Bhagavatam. So that's all I have for today in this introduction. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate all those who tuned in and all those who will be listening to the recorded version. So yeah, my gratefulness. Vanchakapatarubyascha kripasindhubhyevacha patitanam bhavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo.
Krishna Prabhu.
And I guess if anyone has any questions from anything I said, you're welcome to share now, or comments, thoughts, anything in relation to this class. Okay, well, I guess we'll end there, and I'll see you guys next week. Haribol.
Thank you, Haribol.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Haribol. Thank you. Haribol.